Welcome. You're watching Physical Activity Researcher podcast. Interviews with world-leading physical activity researchers. Welcome everyone. So this is second part with Mr. Jakob Jungell, and in first part we were talking about experiences working as a lecturer in University of Applied Sciences and experiences building a fitness testing lab for the Institute and using it for teaching and different projects. And this second part we are going to discuss about working in a sports institute in Finland. So welcome Jakob for this second part.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you worked a couple of years in a University of Applied Sciences, and then you moved to Solvalla Sport Institute. Could you tell a little bit more about this?
I got the job at Solvalla, which is in southern Finland, in Espoo, in 2020, just before the Corona crisis came about. So life looked a lot different in many aspects back then. But it was a nice change because Arcada, as we've discussed, is an applied science, University of Applied Science, and Solvalla is an upper secondary school. So my students were from 16 to around 20, with some exceptions, with some older students. So that's the biggest difference. And what's nice about that, I have to tell something about Solvalla. It's in this beautiful surrounded by forest in Finland, with kilometers of forests around, and one ski center nearby, and all the nice sports facilities and everything for outdoor activities that you might need. So that was a real nice experience to just change from the city, because Arcada is in Helsinki, in the capital of Finland, and Solvalla just outside. So it was a nice change, even though I worked with the same things, but in very different surroundings.
Yeah, and I also worked as a in a sport institute in Pajulahti for a couple of years, and yeah, I think it's good to know if anyone outside from Finland is applying for jobs in these, that usually the sport institutes are in middle of forest, usually by the lake, and you have all the facilities there. They are usually very beautiful places and nice peaceful places. So it's good place to work from that sense. Could you tell a little bit about Solvalla? How is the basic function? How much is athletes? How much is it education? And how much is it like recreational people, recreational sports?
So basically, Solvalla, there were there is two different areas. So we have this school, teaching, upper secondary school, and then we have just the normal client base that we work with, and that's basically a different team, even though we cooperate. And so the students are basically those who or students are generally very interested in sports, and that's why I decided to come to Solvalla. You asked about basically how many, or if I understood it correct, that how many athletes there are. I think there are only a few that might be on a academic academic level, and then mostly are just hobby players or athletes, and then there are also a few that actually don't do that much sports, but are just interested in Solvalla or nature or so forth. But one comment that I could say, actually, when we discussed what's the teaching or the courses like in Arcada, and I said it's quite close to Univeristy, then again Solvalla is very practical. Of course, the same kind of subjects are taught there, but on a much lower level and with a high practical emphasis. So, for instance, if in Arcada I taught about endurance, it was several hours or lessons of theory, and I understood. I explained how you train basically on a theoretical level. But when we do it in Solvalla, we go out, we run, we have a heart rate monitor, we try to understand how do I have to run to be on a low intensity level, and what does it mean for my heart rate if it's high intensity and so forth. So very practical.
Mm. Yeah, and you said that the students are usually 15 to 20 years old and quite practical level. How have you found the teaching? You said that it's different. What kind of experiences you have had?
Well, yeah, I mean, in general, really nice. But actually, when I came to Solvalla, it was the first time that I felt this from the students' point of view, we against the teachers. I mean, you were the teacher, and you belonged to the teacher. The staff and students were their own group. Even though, I mean, the cooperation is nice and so forth, but they're younger, understandable. A lot is going on in their life. Most of them don't know what they want, and you can see it's reflected in how they behave and so forth. I'm not going to deep dive in that part, but the point is that in Arcada, most of the students, they were there because they knew that this is their thing. When in Solvalla, it's more open, and it might vary from year to year, or some cases it feels from day to day also. But basically, the motivational level and the kind of persons that seek themselves to Solvalla compared to Arcada differs.
I think I had similar experiences when I was teaching in Pajulahti, and yeah, my students were also about the same age, 15 to 20, and then I had the adult group, which was maybe from 25 to 50 years old. So yeah, it was a little bit easier to teach the older group, and I think there was, yeah, it is challenging, especially in the beginning. I think it was very challenging. The students are quite random. The groups were quite big, and yeah,
Yeah.
they like to do sports. They don't like to sit down for hour and a half. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good point. Yeah.
What kind of tips you would give for teaching when you are teaching this age group and very active people? How do you manage it?
Well, yeah, one very practical example is that we because of course we had this problem to keep them motivated for 1.5 hours. But when we start the lesson, we ask them how many minutes are we focused and how many minutes do we need rest. And then I say that I need I need 1.5 hours of active listening. So then we might divide into 25 minutes of active listening. No one is allowed to look at their phone or talk with their friends. And then we have 15 or 10 minutes break. But then again, I have to have my 1.5 active listening minutes. So it might be a longer lesson. Of course, everyone hasn't this opportunity to bend out the lesson, but we have like 3 hour slots each day in the morning and then the afternoon. So we're able to basically move around that. So, but decide how much focus do you need, and then it's full focus. You don't allow any like messy behavior or any behavior. You don't allow anyone to discuss with anyone or look at their phone. And then when it's break, you're also, as a teacher, it's your responsibility to end, even though you're almost in the middle of the sentence. And it's kind of fun for them because they're really strict about you finishing in time. But then again, they feel more. I feel that they are more acceptable to the fact that they have their break, and then they come back with the best focus that they have.
Yeah, and I think it's also challenging. You have done a university degree. I've done the same, and we know quite a bit of for example endurance training. But then you have students who don't know much. They don't know much about physiology. So I think it's important to try to get to same level, to adapt the teaching, adapt how much you can teach. What was your experience? How do you adapt kind of on the level that it's suitable for the student group who doesn't have a background of in physiology,
Yeah.
for example?
Well, it was in the beginning more of trial and error. I had an idea that at what level did I teach on Arcada, and I tried to step down. But we've actually used Google Sites as a teaching platform, and it's nice because it almost looks like a website, like a normal website. So I like to add digital and visual elements, make it easy and easily accessible. So I have a lot of videos that I recorded myself, and I edit pictures of me telling about endurance training and strength training, and I really focus on this platform because usually it's something that they can relate to because they are on their phone, and so it's important to make these platforms accessible, like on the phone as well. But then in class, usually, actually, it's hard to say how I scale it down. It's been more like just through a dialogue with the students. So from the first year, when I got some feedback, I realized that what was too much and what worked. So I used that when I planned the course for the next year. But I basically learned that less is more, and talk more about the foundations. And I think you as a teacher, you have to have a good understanding what the foundations are. And then again, like among all the sports institutes in Finland, there are some agreements on what we should focus on. So of course that helps me focus on certain things. And what I've actually used, because there are these students that like this foundation is almost too much, and then there are these students that find that you don't get enough out of the foundation. So I usually have like this must know info, and then some nice to know info, and must know info are for those who have struggled to just keep up the pace, and the nice to know info for those who need more challenge. And I tell them, this you have to know, and then perhaps on my platform I have more info. This is some nice to know. And usually at my classes when I teach, then I focus on the must know. I might say something about some nice to know things about physiology and training, dependent on how the discussion goes. But I usually have the nice to know facts. It's available, but I'm not gonna basically mess their minds and their concentration up by telling too much that might get someone off track.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. And how do you feel about the fact that sometimes when you are just teaching the must know things, then they might get the impression that they know everything about this, and they might be very overconfident to say the least. So how do you give them the must know facts and confidence, but also understanding that they know very little?
Well, yeah, as you said, that's a thing. Really, I mean, and I'd say it usually the same persons feel that they know everything, but I think when I get that feeling, I try to hand some material over from the nice to know part, and usually they're not that they don't really want to accept that and study more about it. So it's actually hard to say what I do, but you can get the sense what the situation is from the discussion with them and in the class. So basically, when I get the feeling that, hey, they think they know everything, then I try to challenge them, ask them things, and usually that's when you see what the case is.
Yeah, I think that's a very challenging thing in teaching, in science communication, that how do you simplify it enough that people get the message. For example, we have seen now with the pandemic that sometimes it's simplified too much, and it's actually super complex thing that even the virologists are not understanding. So I think that's a really challenge how to kind of balance, and that's also part of the teaching, especially for this kind of practical jobs, that they need to be confident enough to do the work, but they should also understand that it's complicated and the knowledge is increasing all the time.
Yeah, and actually, regarding misinformation, I like actually one of my subjects that I like to talk about is basically pro science and cherry picking. So I like to have these mythbusters, and then I present like common statements about fitness and nutrition, and then I open them and try to make them realize how things are. And these are quite fundamental things that everyone heard about, basically about carbohydrates and heat training and so forth, pretty basic. And I try to make them understand where to find reliable information. And it's something we discuss a lot. And even though we talk about it a lot, you often see that the sources that they use for to support their statements in some documents that they write are of pretty poor quality. So it's something that you really have to talk about quite often to get them to understand it, how important it is.
And if listeners are interested about teaching about misinformation, I made a recording with the person whose name is escaping me now, but the title is Why Students Should Be Taught to Create Misinformation. So her method was that they actually create misinformation, so students learn how easy it is to make, and then they can be critical. It was really good points and really interesting episode. Yeah, so we've been talking about the teaching experience in the Sport Institute. What other things you do in the Sport Institute?
Well, actually, I've been mostly teaching, but then we have smaller testing activity as well. Not that high level equipment as in Arcada, but some field tests and a few cycloergometer tests has been. I've done a few actually, and we have an in-body device as well. So use that, and in fact also a few for first bits devices as well. But actually, I don't do that much else than teaching at Solvalla, because we have a lack of resources, that is teachers. So I've been forced to, or I had the chance to dig deep into teaching.
Yeah, so a lot of teaching, and now you have also started just a few months ago working at Hintsa Performance. Could you tell a little bit about the company and how did you end up starting also there?
Yeah, well, Hintsa Performance is a company that Dr. Hintsa started. I don't know how many years ago, and unfortunately he's not with us anymore, but the company lives on. And what Hintsa does is provide holistic coaching to both companies and to athletes. And what I do is I'm working at the moment with persons in the business world and trying to help them improve health in different aspects. So the holistic point of view is not just focusing on one area, for instance, physical activity or nutrition, but also look at the mental side and the core that is spoken of quite well much. That's just, do you understand yourself and know your own goals? So it has been really interesting to also work with other aspects than just your core competence, which is the physical activity. Of course, that's something that I can provide most help in, but I'm also challenged to help the person with areas that aren't my expertise.
And Hintsa Performance, I think you have offices in the UK, Switzerland, Finland. Are you mainly working with in Finland or with the international customers?
In Finland at the moment,
Yeah. And how much do you work there? How do you combine? How do you find time to work and in two jobs at the same time?
Yeah, well, actually, at the moment, I'm going to work at Solvalla 40% of a full working week and 60% at Hintsa. So actually, moving back towards working with clients. And what's nice about Hintsa is I have a lot of use of my pedagogic skills. So I feel that in some way I still can teach, but in a very different way.
So 60% at Hintsa. How do you feel? What's your expectations? Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I wanna develop as a coach and learn new ways and to coach and help persons to improve their health and basically see how I can step up here as I did in Arcada. I stepped up and see how can I step up in basically as a coach, because my coaching experience from before, actually I've been an entrepreneur many years and before I was in Arcada, and actually a few years also I did 2 jobs there, but then I did more fitness testing and strength and conditioning, and now I'm moving more towards this holistic coaching approach. So not just this getting person physically in shape, but getting them to just feel better in many aspects.
So doing holistic coaching, do you use any technology in your coaching? How is the process of this kind of coaching?
Well, the ones that I've been in, basically we use a lot of surveys to get an idea of how the person is feeling, quite like or they quite well cover different areas of health. Then we use first beats, and then the clients might have some devices of their own that we can use. So it's a lot of actually a lot of my clients at the moment is going to be basically online. I'm not going to see everyone physically, so I'm using tools that I can assign them without meeting them personally. But then I will also have clients that I'm going to work more basically in a classic way, face to face and in a gym.
And you said it's holistic coaching. You haven't worked there for long. Have you already seen that certain aspect of their behavior needs more coaching than others?
Well, perhaps I'm not gonna comment on my own clients that much because there's so few. But what I've learned, because I've discussed with other coaches, I have a sense that the core, so the basically your own identity, is the thing that people don't really focus on. I mean, if you ask someone, do you know who you are and do you know what you want? People stop because they haven't really thought about it. Yes, they have, but they haven't really digged into it. And the point with knowing the core is that without having it basically thought through, it's hard to have the other aspects of health in a good balance. You might have it quite well in some aspects, perfect, and some not that good. But without the core, basically in shape, it's hard to have the outer layer in a good condition.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe we do another episode after you've been coaching for a year or something. I think it will be
Sounds
very
good.
interesting to hear the experiences. I think our time starts to be up. Do you have anything you would like to add into this discussion?
Well, it's sort of one thing when you asked or you comment on that if anyone is new to teaching and starting. And when I started in Arcada, there was this one like phenomenon that worried me back then, and actually there's a name for it. I learned later. I think it's called the imposter syndrome, and it's not just in teaching. It might be in anywhere where you work, but I think the main idea about the imposter syndrome is that at any given moment, everyone around you will realize that you don't know anything, and basically you're worthless, and that's what you think. So, but and when I started that, I from time to time I had this feeling, and luckily it didn't grow bigger. It actually basically it got smaller, and I almost got away with it. But I think it's very common that you feel that you're incompetent, especially when you teach things that aren't your core competence. But here's just believe in yourself, prepare, be structured, and you don't have to focus on that. You will succeed.
Those are great words to wrap up this part too. Thank you, Jacob, for taking the time.
Thank you very much.